Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the GAE Retired Lunch Bunch. Today, we have the honor of having GAE President Lisa Morgan with us to talk to us about the state of our union. So I am going to turn it over to Lisa so that she can have all the time she needs.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. Great to be with you this morning. I am Lisa Morgan, a kindergarten teacher and the current president of the Georgia Association of Educators. They gave me an hour. I'm going to try not to talk for an hour. And certainly, if you all have questions, please let me know. Um, I think the first thing I will say is that we all know the political climate that we are living in. And our schools are a part of their communities. So, what we are seeing in our communities is being reflected in our schools with our students and with educators. One of the things that we have been working very hard on is our fall membership conference, which will be October 25th and 26th, and all members are invited to attend. And as we have been working on preparing for that conference, um, our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee is preparing 2 sessions. And the members of the committee had a very rich conversation about how the fact that we've been providing professional development and we've been providing sessions for educators about our diverse students. But they are very concerned about what they're seeing in their schools and how they are seeing diverse educators not being fully accepted by their colleagues. So we will have one session concerning working with diverse colleagues and working with a diverse group of people in your building, whether that diversity, no matter the form that diversity takes. In particular, one of our members who has a disability expressed feeling bullied by other colleagues. So that's one of the things that we are looking forward to at the fall conference, but also helping our members to understand that our acceptance and our colleagues, it's just as important that they feel accepted and part of the school community as it is for each one of our students to be accepted and feel part of the classroom community. So that's something that's kind of been nagging at me a little bit, that perhaps in our wanting to ensure that all of our students feel safe and accepted, that we've missed some of our colleagues. So that session will be at the fall conference, so I would invite everyone to attend. The Professional Development Committee is also working on having sessions for the fall conference. We are about a month into school, and I know our educators are very busy, but at the same time, we also have been, it's election season. We have some special elections occurring, and the GAE-FPE has endorsed candidates in those special elections. And in fact, our endorsed candidate, Deborah Shigley, was the top vote getter in Senate District 21, but she did not reach, she got 40% of the vote. So there will be a runoff in that district September 23rd. So I would ask everyone, if you know someone who lives, works, etc., in North Fulton and Cherokee, ask them if they live in Senate District 21. Ask them to check, make sure, and if they do, ask them to go vote for Deborah Shigley on September 23rd. So as the school year has been ramping up, our GAE committee has been wrapping up. I've already mentioned our professional development and our diversity, equity, inclusion committee. Our legislative committee is meeting later this week. Our ESP committee has been meeting. So all of those are there. I just got a question. How do we register for the fall conference? I am very hopeful that this afternoon we will finish up the September e-news, and it will have a link to register for the fall conference. And if we don't get it finished today, it will certainly be finished by tomorrow morning. The state of our building here, the GAE headquarters is in a building here in Tucker, and we have had power outages, internet outages, and phone outages in the last several days. So some of our tasks, everyone that knows me knows I have a sticky note list. Well, the things on my sticky note list, I can do a lot, but I can't do it when we don't have any power, and I can't do it when we don't have internet. It's one of the things that we all know. The internet goes out now and we shut down. So that will be going out. Another thing I would like y'all to know about what we are doing, we are working very hard toward election 2026. And that is something that we had more engagement of our members for the 2024 election. The 2026 election is shaping up to be very important for public education. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what the candidates are saying already, but we have candidates who are making campaign promises to eliminate the state income tax. And you may be thinking, oh, that would be wonderful. That would be horrible for public education. 50% of the state budget is QBE and public education. So if the state income tax is eliminated, then we would see drastic cuts to public education. And we would also have to see, how are they going to replace that tax money? It likely would be replaced by higher sales tax. And we all know that sales tax is a very regressive tax because those who have lower incomes must spend the majority, if not all of their income to provide themselves with the basic necessities. So that would shift the tax burden even more onto lower income Georgians. So we are already looking ahead toward the 2026 gubernatorial race. The U.S. Senate race is obviously also very important. And we know that there will be a lot of congressional races that we will be looking forward to in 2026. Another piece of that election, I know many of you are familiar with Project 2025 and the things that were promised in Project 2025. We are seeing those every single day. We are seeing more and more of those things being implemented. And there is a direct target on the backs of public education, public educators, and our organizations in Project 2025. So we know as we go through the next year that is something that is going to be ramped up even more. Actually heard from a member yesterday that this member had just gotten their first job as a classroom teacher. And they were in the classroom through a federal grant. Just started, brand new educator. they've been in their position for 1 month, and their position has been eliminated. So we know that there will be big impacts for students. This educator was not the only educator in their building that the positions have been eliminated because the federal funding for the grant was cut. And it's public education. I had a reporter reach out last week to ask me a question about curriculum, saying that Georgia had received a letter saying that we were about to lose another $3 million for a grant. And when I looked at the actual letter and looked at it, was talking about curriculum. So the reporter immediately thought this is education money. It was actually not education money. When I read it, the letter was not from the U.S. Department of Education. It was from Health and Human Services, and it was addressed to Family and Children Services here in Georgia. So programs that are being provided to Georgians are being cut, not just in public education, but the funding was threatened for this program that provides services for teenagers through the Department of Family and Children Services. So all of those things are hitting right now, which is what we had expected. We know that the election last year, when we had the new administration, all of the funding for the 24-25 school year had already been received. All the funding for 25-26 is coming in. Either it was delayed this summer and we finally got it, or it is beginning to come in now as the new fiscal year begins October 1st for the federal government. The delays in that funding we are seeing across the board. And so that will have impacts not only on the educators who are losing their positions 2 months into the school year. And we all know how things work in public education. 2 months into the school year, most systems are not still looking for educators. So losing that position 2 months in the school year is going to be particularly difficult for those educators to find another position. But let's take that one step further to our students. They are 2 months in. They've developed those rituals and routines. They've gotten to know this educator. They are getting the assistance they need, and it's going to be gone. So ultimately, it is our students that are going to suffer through all of this. So that is why it is very, very important that, number one, we have a governor here in Georgia who's going to support public education and not support eliminating the tax base for the budget of our state. And then also that we elect members of Congress who are going to continue to support public education and stand up against these efforts to eliminate public education. We certainly are anticipating that the 2026 legislative session, we will see every bad bill that you've heard about in another state is going to be introduced here in Georgia. So one thing I will say about that is beware of the press releases and the pep rallies, because we are going to see a lot of press releases and pep rallies. And what I mean by that is we are going to see a lot of legislators who introduce a bill, or maybe haven't even introduced the bill yet. They have a press conference. They have a pep rally. Rah, rah, rah. I'm going to do this. I'm supporting my people back home. And that is literally the end. So we saw a lot of that last year. So be careful when you see, oh, this legislator is introducing something. Um, any legislator can introduce any bill at any time. If it's not ever heard in committee, then the chances of it moving, it's not moving if there's not a committee hearing. That's why the committee hearings in the legislature are so very important. And I see it over and over again. And members call me and say, Lisa, what are we going to do about this? And I'm like, well, there's nothing to do. You got caught up in a press conference and a pep rally. Um, and also, I know I feel like I shouldn't have to say this to adults, but I have to. Don't believe everything you hear, you see on social media. Um, I had numerous phone calls last year, members so excited. I know GA supporting this bill to let us retire after 25 years. There was no bill in the state legislature last year to allow educators to retire with full retirement after 25 years. There was a bill about returning to work for people who had already retired. But somehow the message got out on social media, and I had people so excited calling me. They just knew GAE was supporting this bill. I'm like, yes, we support the return to work bill, but that's not what it does. So when you hear somebody saying that something specific on social media, this bill is going to do this, um, we had somebody have a press conference and a pep rally over the summer, and people started calling me, what's our position on this? And I said, well, we don't have a position because there is no bill. That's one of the things that the legislature has changed in the last few years. Um, there are no pre-files. So if the legislature is not in session, no bill can even be filed. So when we left the beginning of April and they sine died, no legislator can introduce a new bill until the second Monday in January. So we had people had a pep rally and said they're introducing this bill. And our members called me, Lisa, what's our position on this bill? No such bill exists. So that's one of the things I'm really cautioning people right now. Understand that if the legislature is not in session, and they are not in session again until the second Monday in January, then there are nothing can move. Nothing is happening in our legislative session, in our legislature right now. They are not in session. The other piece of that is also the legislature is, however, holding hearings, and they're holding hearings across the state. Different study committees were appointed, and I always smile a little bit because these study committees are appointed saying that they will meet over the summer. Well, to all of us, summer is June and July and maybe August. Most educators are back in school in August, and if you're in the classroom, summer's over the 1st of August. For our legislators, they say they're meeting in summer. They have started holding meetings in August. We had one committee that met last week. And I am not going to say the great big long name of this committee, but it's a committee that says they are looking at reducing administrative mandates. So they are looking at all of the things that the legislature has put in place that did not include funding. They held their first hearing last week in Houston County, and Joe was there for that hearing representing GAE. And there are several other committees that are holding the hearings now. And we may have hearings as far up as December, looking toward the legislative session. And I know you may feel like I've talked a lot about the legislative session, but this legislative session is going to be key. We know that it is an election year. We know that there are legislators that are going to want to continue to cut taxes. We know that Governor Kemp has already told state agencies there will be no additional funding. So that means we are looking at, for public education, there will be no additional funding. At the same time that we are looking at, we know vouchers will be coming up again. The voucher proponents who managed to get the program passed by one vote came back last year before it was even implemented, wanting to expand the program. We know that the number of students enrolled in this program was about a third of the funding allotted. So those voucher proponents are going to come back and say, well, we need to expand the eligibility as they did last year. We also know the big bad bill, which is what we are calling it on the federal level, does include a federal voucher program. Joe and I were in the briefing from NEA a couple of weeks ago, and that program begins in 2027, and the states either opt in or opt out of that program. And it is our understanding that there is one person in the state of Georgia that makes that decision, and that is Governor Kemp. So we anticipate that he will at some point opt Georgia in. And based on the way the federal law is written, so far there are no rules for that. It is a much smaller tax credit, however, than anyone would anticipate. It is a $1,700 tax credit. And so taxpayers would give $1,700 to the scholarship organization, and then the scholarship organization is supposed to then give scholarships for private school for students. We all know that $1,700 is not, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the tuition at most private schools. So we're looking at 2026 that we know that is coming, and don't believe that since the governor has the authority in this situation, we don't think that the legislature will address it in any way. But like I said, be prepared. Every bad thing that you've heard about in another state for public education, it's all coming here. All of the bills that want to impose one particular religion or one particular piece of religion on our schools and our students will certainly be reintroduced. One that we will be looking for, because it's been introduced the last couple of years, we have been asking for more counselors, and more school social workers and more school psychologists, because we all know that mental health is a serious issue in our schools. Um, and so we have been asking for more of those professionals in all of our schools. Um, the last couple of years, bills have been introduced to allow chaplains to serve as school counselors. So we anticipate that coming back once again. And number one, we believe that every professional serving in a school should be a professional and should have the appropriate certification here in Georgia. And number two, we know that our counselors are trained to deal with our students, our school social workers, our school psychologists. And so we want to ensure that those professionals are the ones who are providing those services to our students. Um, so I think I'm going to hush about legislative, but it is something that we know is coming very quickly. It's September 3rd today, and it seems like just last week we were at our spring representative assembly in April. It seemed like we're speeding up every little bit. But the legislative session is going to be very important this year for funding. And the other piece of that is we know we're losing federal funding every day. Talking earlier about the new educator that lost their position. We had educators at the beginning of this administration who were working under a federal grant program that literally found out overnight that their program had been ended. And this was a program with special needs students. So we are anticipating more of that. We know that these programs are needed for our students. And the governor has said there is no additional funding. So how are local school districts going to fill those gaps of what they are losing for federal funding? That's why it's more important than ever that our locals are active and attending their school board meetings and finding out what is happening at the school board meetings moving forward.
But you
With
might want to
that,
bring two.
one of the things I'm going to talk about is our
Could you mute?
charter and
Please mute.
strategic waiver districts. All of the systems renewed their strategic waivers last year in 2024. That's something that we are continuing to work on, and we are still 5 years later educating legislators about what this means. I still have the experience that I talk with the legislator and say, well, you passed this law and the school district waived it. And basically they said, we're not going to follow this law. And they look at me and they're like, no, that doesn't happen. We wouldn't let that happen. I'm like, yes, it does. And so what is happening, the one that was the most interesting to me was the bill that was passed to ensure that every educator had planning time during the day. And if you've talked to an educator recently, you know what's happening with planning time. Either there's no sub and they are asked to cover another class during their planning time, or the other one is they're asked to attend a meeting during their planning time. There's some kind of meeting during their planning time. And I know when I say that, people think, well, you need to go to the IEP meeting. This isn't an IEP meeting that, it's more than just once, an IEP meeting happens once a year. So you may have 3 or 4 at the beginning of the year and then you don't have any more. No, this is you're being asked to be in a meeting every single Thursday during your planning period. I saw the schedule for one school that literally teachers were being told they had a meeting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday with somebody different each of those days during their planning period. So in reality, planning where they can plan to teach could only happen on Friday or before or after school in that time when we all know teachers are working and they are off contract time. They are supposed to be home with their families, but they are still working. When the bill passed to provide planning time every day for every teacher, there was a lot of discussion, particularly in the committee meetings, about the lack of substitutes. And so the bill literally gives exceptions in the bill saying K-5 can be asked to cover for a lack of sub however many days during their planning time, and middle and high school, it's built in the law. But when I went through the 1,300-page document that is the waiver system contracts, the majority of the systems that waived it's duty-free lunch and planning time are in the same law. The majority of the districts that waived that in their explanation for why they were waiving mentioned the lack of substitutes. So their reasoning for waiving was already in the law, but they waived it anyway. We even had one district that literally said, no, our teachers are never going to be provided a duty-free time during the day. And if you think about that, I know you all are retired educators, think back. I know that even 15 minutes during the day, just to decompress and get ready for the rest of the day is very important. And so that's one of the major concerns that I have now for our educators and our staff and educator mental health. We all know being an educator is stressful. But this belief that educators don't need that duty-free time to have lunch, and that they don't need the appropriate time to prepare for instruction, is something that I think is going to be very important moving forward. I'm going to try to stop talking about legislative now. I am very excited. I mentioned earlier about the fall conference, very excited that we are able to have something for our members in the fall. And we will have that registration information very soon. Also very excited that all of our committees are up and running. The board did approve my committee appointments in July. But as always happens, I will have new committee appointments for them in September because people agree to serve on our committees and then their circumstances change. And so they are unable to continue to serve. This is my final year as GAE president. So my goal this year is very much to ensure that everything that we have put in place to ensure that GAE continues to grow and prosper and be that voice for public educators is codified and that it's all written down. I have already started. I don't know who the next president will be, but I have started them a calendar with notes to try and help them as they transition. One example of a note I have written in there in the month of August, I've said, you are going to be getting an email from NEA about NEA conferences during the year. It comes in August. Highlight, save, whatever you can do with that email, because literally the state president gets that email in August with the deadlines for all of the NEA conferences during the year, and you never get anything else. So, if you've been a president for a couple of years, you know that email, when it comes, you got to save it. You got to put it somewhere where you know where it is, because it's got all the deadlines. It's got everything you need, but you get it one time and that's it. So you have to take care of that when you get it, and you have to make sure you can go back and pull it up again and again and again throughout the year when those deadlines come up. So I am working to do that and to give the next person some of those things that I describe it as the everybody knows things, and everybody thinks everybody knows, but if somebody didn't tell you, you don't know. So it's kind of like, I remember very well when I became GAE president, the first Thursday that I was president, I got up that morning and I took a shower, and I'm getting ready to get to work, and I opened my email, and there was an email at 7:30 that morning giving me an agenda for a meeting that was happening at 4 p.m. that day. And I was like, okay. And I'm talking to people, I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me? They're like, oh yeah, that meeting happens every Thursday. And I'm like, why didn't somebody tell me about this meeting that happens every Thursday? And why did I get an agenda at 7:30 this morning for it? How can I be prepared for this meeting today if the agenda came at 7:30? Well, my note for the next person says, the meetings are now on the first and third Thursday at 4 o'clock. And if you get the agenda at 7:30 that morning, you are getting it early, because there are times that the agenda arrives at noon or 1 before the 4 o'clock meeting. So put the meeting on your calendar, be ready for it, but you're not going to know what it's about until late. So those kind of things are things that I'm trying to make sure that I leave a record of for the next person. So hopefully they'll have some of those things that everybody just assumes the president knows, but you don't if somebody doesn't tell you. We do have the board meeting coming up actually next weekend, and very excited for our new board members to finish their training, and then we have the board meeting, and then the next board meeting will be in November. So basically where we are right now, very, very concerned about federal legislation and impacts that it could have, because we know that public education, NEA, is a very specific target of some of this legislation. Also, I know those of you who attended the NEA Representative Assembly know, but if you did not, there were some items that, once again, unfortunately, delegates who were in attendance, provided media outlets with video and audio recordings of the Representative Assembly. And that has become a serious issue. If you've never attended the Representative Assembly, there are round numbers, 6,000 delegates from all across the country in attendance. And in order for an item to be submitted for consideration and discussion, it takes 50 members to sign on to that item. So if you think about that, that is less than 1% of the delegates in attendance is what it takes for an item to be considered. And we have had delegates who, when something was considered, have then provided media outlets with information, which has been harmful to the organization, but also delegates who participated in those discussions have also been harmed. We have had obviously lots of online harassment. So I encourage everyone to think about when you see those things, and to understand that the requirement to get something considered at the NEA is less than 1% of the delegates. So then it is considered, and literally the news stories were coming out saying NEA was going to do something based on something that was by rule referred to the executive committee. So that's where we are with that. Looking forward, we will have participants in all NEA conferences this year. And if you know someone, particularly if you know someone less than 35 years old who is an active and engaged member, I would love to have their names. NEA does give me requirements for the members that I recommend to attend NEA conferences. And one of those requirements is always that 30 to 40% of the people attending be younger than 35. And that is usually a hard age to find because it needs to be an active teacher under 35. And so that's our hard one. Linda, did you have a question?
Yes, I did, but I sort of wanted you to finish. I wanted to go back to, did I hear you correctly to say that this governor is a pro-education governor, pro-public education governor, or that he says he is?
And no, ma'am, what I said is we need to ensure that our next governor is a pro-public education governor.
Oh, I got you. Because he can't have it both ways. That's
no,
all.
he can't. And I will say, he says he is pro-public education, and he says that he has done a lot for public education. And the clip is out there when the federal government withheld the funding for professional development before and after school, et cetera, this summer. I said publicly, if the governor is the pro-public education governor that he says he is, then he will ensure that we get this funding. But no, he says he's the pro-public education governor, and we need our next governor to be someone who is not saying they are the pro-public education governor. I look at it as one of those things. If you have to tell somebody who you are, then I wonder, is that who you are? Because your actions should have already told me that you were supporting public education. I shouldn't have to wait for you to tell me about it.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Oh, and I got one other question about the agenda for the legislative conference. I
Yes,
mean,
ma'am.
whatever. Yeah, I want to make sure because I did not see women's concerns as part of the DEI, and I'm sure it's not a part of it. But I think that we should look out of the realm for other issues that our members should be concerned about that are not in the Constitution, like like women's concerns are
Right.
not there.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
Yes, ma'am. And in 2020, when the committees were revamped, and the Women's Concerns Committee was one of the ones that actually was rolled into DEI. And NEA itself has also, we used to have the women's leadership training, and they have rolled that into, it is now the minority and women's leadership training. And that NEA conference for east of the Mississippi will be at the end of January. So yes, that's one of those changes that we need to look at,
Right.
and also look at, as this administration continues, we know that they are attacking the rights of every
Everybody.
minority group, including women. I am very realistic about where that's coming from and what that means.
Well, my concern is the data shows that DEI was not a black thing, and
Right.
white women more than anyone else benefited from DEI. So I just want us to
Right.
stay focused on what DEI should be and what it is not.
Right.
Thank you, Lisa.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. And excuse me just a moment, you all. Back to NEA, that is one of the things, there are, and NEA has been briefing state leaders on it, and should it come to the point that we need to ask you all to act, we will. But there have been bills introduced in Congress specifically targeting NEA. And if you go back to Project 2025, you will see exactly what they are trying to do. As of now, there's no alarm bells being rung. Just be aware that it's there, and that should we get to the point that we need our members to reach out to Congress people, we will let you know. I think that's kind of everything. It's never everything that is happening. One thing I will go back to about what's impacting our educators. I've had a lot of people reach out, and we have a lot of school districts that are implementing the cell phone ban that passed last year early. So if you know people in school systems that have implemented that already, they are implementing early. If you know a school system that has not implemented the actual deadlines in the bill, all school districts have to have a local policy in place January 1st, 2026. So if your local district has not implemented no cell phones during instructional time, They should be working on a policy. They have to have that policy in place January 1st. They must implement that policy July 1st, 2026. So I hear a lot of people saying, well, the law already says you can't have a cell phone in Georgia. That is not what the law says. The law says the local district has to have a policy by January 1st, 2026, and they must implement by July 1st. And what that local policy looks like is up to them. And that local policy is kindergarten to 8th grade. It is not high school. We do anticipate that there will be another version dealing with high school in the next legislative session. We also, the law does include that for a documented medical reason, there are exemptions to the policy. So, but I've seen a lot of policies from districts saying in accordance with HB, we are doing this. They have the option to implement early, and that's what they are doing. But if the school system has not implemented yet, they are not in violation of that law. I have gotten positive feedback from most educators about those districts that have gone ahead and implemented no cell phones. Believe it or not, when the kids don't have that phone in their hand all day, they do this crazy thing called talk to each other. And so that's one of the things that I've heard from educators a lot, is that students are actually, in those cases where they don't have the cell phone, they are participating more in class and they're actually socializing with each other. And I've also seen some old school things where kids are learning how to fold a note to try to pass a note once again. And so those problems that teachers had years ago are returning in that issue. Yes, Patrick. You are muted, dear.
Sorry about that. I was on my phone. Sorry about being late getting on the phone, but are you aware of the letter? I don't know, maybe if you've discussed it, but NEA was served a letter about being anti-Semitic. Are you familiar with that? Or have you heard to Becky? And it's concerning to me because I was chair of the Jewish Affairs Caucus, and I know that's the biggest lie there ever was. I know it's just an attack on NEA, but have you heard any?
Patrick, the only letter that NEA has received is concerning the NBI from this summer. And the only notification we have received is that the committee has asked for some NEA documents. And of course, NEA is complying with that request. And that is from reporting that actually it's all part of the attack on NEA. We have not seen here in Georgia the attack in the same way that it's happening in other states. But what they have done, I've got some of these right here on my desk that were here waiting for me this morning. The Freedom Foundation here in Georgia is sending letters to educators saying that they can get back, let me see, it says it's a check for $529 and that they can get their dues reimbursed if they cancel their membership, and that if they cancel their membership, we still have to represent them. That's what the letters say here in Georgia. I receive about 4 each month. And interestingly enough, the first thing I do is when I receive them is I go and see if they are actually members. In July, I received 4 of these letters, and none of them were members. August, well, let me go back. One person was a retired member, and she used the form to tell us to please update her address. In August, I received 4. 3 were not members, and 1 was a substitute and substitute membership is you must do cash or credit card, and you pay 1 time a year for your substitute membership. I haven't gone through these that were laying here waiting for me this morning, but the majority of the time they are not members. That's what's happening in Georgia.
Well, if you need any help with, because, I can defend anything, because
Right.
if there's anybody that knows, I know. Because
Right.
the things that were not being done, GAE complied when I was on the board and did everything to bend over backwards. So I will be there for you if you ever need.
Yes. What's happening, Patrick, in other states, the Freedom Foundation is using that argument to, as they are doing here, try to union bust and get our members to cancel their membership.
Right.
And so that's where it is coming from.
Thank you, Lisa.
All right. Thank you. We are getting close to the end of the hour, and I love you all say we're going to start on time, we're going to end on time. So I am going to say thank you to all of you for being here today. Thank you for allowing me the honor to serve as your president. I'm very excited about this final year and the things that we can do together to support our members, to support our students, and to support public education. I feel like I say often, I believe in public education because public education believed in me. And I feel like we are on the front line of ensuring that public education will continue to believe in our students and continue to exist for our students that are reliant on public education for their future.
Thank you, Lisa. And I'm going to interject here just really, really quickly. Lisa shared about the upcoming fall member conference. And I just want to also share, as chair of the GAE-PD committee, that Tony Smith, who hosted this meeting, will be sharing some professional development, and it's upcoming soon. So I'm trying to promote early and often here, and you are welcome to join via Zoom on Saturday morning or on next Tuesday. So I hope you will join us for this. I'll go through and put the link in the chat. And I do want to say thank you to Tony for hosting today. And Lisa, thank you as always for waxing prosaically. It was wonderful. So thank you for being here.
And I want to let you know, I was trying to share my screen, but I don't have the graphic up, that our GAE Retired informational meeting is Friday, September 12th. And our first of the season GAE pre-retirement seminar is Saturday, September 20th. And when the e-news comes out tomorrow, the links will be there for you to register for those events.
Thank you, everybody, for being on this particular PD and your wrong hat on this GA Retired Lunch Munch. When we meet on the first Wednesday in October, Vivian Brooks is going to bring us a voter update, which ties nicely into what Lisa shared today. And hopefully we will begin to be prepared for the General Assembly and make sure that we all can vote when the elections occur. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you early and often on whatever else is happening with all things GAE. Have a great day.